everything that's going on, I feel that we need to strike now while we can.
Finally, it is time for annihilation. Let's think rationally about this. We don't want to spoil the moment.
Fine. Do it your way.
So you just saw a clip from the end of Modern Times directed by the person next to me, Eric Forsman.
Hello.
Eric, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you about this. We're going to be talking about the Oscars, our reactions to that, and if we agree with it or not. But first, I kind of want to know what you do on set. I know you were director of the end of Modern Times. Do you play other roles? And sort of where did you get into film?
Well, I would say I'm kind of everything in between. I've done directing, I've done writing, I've done my own editing. I've been in that work for quite a while now. I started around Z-Fest since 2021, participated in the 48 Hour, and with the end of Modern Times, that was the 50/50 challenge. How I started getting really into films, well, I would say the generation of us kind of started with kind of the interest in certain movies and everything. Jokingly, but true, I was inspired by the nostalgia critic for movies.
Sure.
That got me into kind of what can make a good movie, what doesn't make a good movie. And, I mean, that's kind of the weird method I kind of have. Like, I watch a lot of terrible movies because it's in a way that helps learn, what goes wrong or what are some notes that you can do for the future and everything. It's a weird, unorthodox method, but it really does surprisingly help me out a lot in making my own movies and how they eventually come up and everything. And yeah, just trying to get the projects off the ground and everything with a smaller group. But it's really worthwhile, especially when you have a great cast and crew, especially if they're not exactly the most well-used or known people, and seeing them now in other projects, it makes it more worthwhile in getting your projects out there.
For sure, yeah. I am 100% with you on that. Using new people, I think it's great to give new people opportunities, and, other people get to see them and might want to use them as well. So, yeah, total agreement with you there. You said the nostalgia critic and some of those movies that influenced you. What were those movies and what time period were they from?
Let's see here. Time period wise, I think a lot of the 90s, I would say. Particularly one of my favorite films is Tim Burton's Ed Wood. I really could relate to the story of Ed Wood, trying to get everything all together and everything. Just trying to get a bunch of weirdos out there and trying to form into something magical out of it. And just trying to get there with the projects. Between that and another film ironically about bad movie maker, The Disaster Artist with Tommy Wiseau is another one that I got into. In fact, funny enough, I was watching the screening for The Room, one of the best writing tips I had was from the guy who played Mark, Greg Sestero, who said, keep the funnel on. If you're not having fun with the writing, then it's not worth writing. And that has really helped me out in keeping passion with the projects that I've been working on.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to move right into the meat of our conversation here today, which is the Oscars. Obviously, they just happened. You watched them, I'm assuming, or at least you know the results.
We've seen them I've watched them with a couple of my buddies.
Awesome. What did you think, right or wrong, this year?
You know what? I actually think they did a really good job. I actually debated whether or not this or last year's was better, but I think this year had a lot more satisfying wins. Some of the biggest wins of the night, Oppenheimer was a favorite of everybody's, and seeing that in Best Picture was not a surprise at all, but a welcoming surprise to see Christopher Nolan finally get one. The biggest one, though, and one that my friends literally jumped off the couch for and cheering, was visual effects with Godzilla -1.
Mm-hmm.
Satisfying one, not only because it's a Godzilla film that won, but because so many visual effects, like, you think it just requires, like, teams upon teams and, like, rushing to make the next movie and everything, but the Godzilla -1 They took their time, and it was about 35 people that came in, and that's what made it so beautiful with this win and everything with the visual effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Godzilla -1 was actually my best movie of last year. I thought it was fantastic and beat out all of the Best Picture nominees to be my favorite. But obviously didn't get nominated for Best Picture or anything else. But yeah, well deserved for that Oscar. Let's go into some more specific, the nominees more specifically.
Sure.
I might have Jennifer, if you could pull up Best Picture. Well, the one that won was Oppenheimer.
Yep.
Of course. What are your thoughts on that? Well deserved, or no? You would have gone with something different.
I thought Oppenheimer was fantastic, especially with its tech and everything. One of the best premieres I've ever went to. As you may have known, the last year was the phenomenal of Barbenheimer, and when that premiered, naturally my friends and I, we all kind of went into these. We had suits on. Some of us were wearing pink. I wore a mixed combo of a full pink suit. Almost brought that here today.
Nice.
But it was phenomenal watching those two movies back to back of not only different tones but similar ideologies of existential crisis and identity. So I think Oppenheimer was a good one. Personally, my favorite was Barbie. I think that should have won for screenplay over American Fiction, but American Fiction was also a pretty solid one in its writing and a surprising score nom, which, while I'll have to say is a little sad to see Spider-Verse go, I definitely would have replaced Dial of Destiny with Spider-Verse for score. American Fiction was quite the underdog with going in and out there with their themes, and especially the performance by Jeffrey Wright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My thoughts on Oppenheimer was it seemed to me to be like a better biopic than most. It felt less Oscar baity, more cinematic than I think biopics in the past. And obviously Cillian Murphy, I thought, did a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. Robert Downey Jr., and they both won.
Josh Peck is now in the Best Picture movie. That's always going to be weird to think about.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with him. Who's that guy?
He was Josh in Drake and Josh, the Nickelodeon sitcom. So you're kind of growing up on this 2000s show, and it's like, well, now this guy's in a Christopher Nolan movie, so it's like there's kind of a weirdness to that, but it's a good kind of weirdness. But as we mentioned, Oppenheimer had a stacked cast, Barbie had a stacked cast, and just speaking of performances, like it really did go 3 for 4 for me for the best performances, and even the one performance I wasn't too big on was Emma Stone for actress. I thought the one I did like, Sandra Hüller for An Eye on Me of a Fall, got in for nomination, and its screenplay win was still very satisfying to me. The other 3 wins, Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., and Divine Joy Randolph for the holdovers for supporting actress, they were all like my top spots for best acting. So it was a pretty great night for me.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move into the one that you have talked about as your favorite, Barbie. Obviously made a ton of money, got nominated for a bunch of awards. Why did you like it, and why do you think it deserved the awards that it did get? Or
the one award that it got, I thought the song that it had choice one was phenomenal, although of course a lot of people, including myself, preferred I'm Just Ken a lot more, with the amazing performance by Ryan Gosling. But I felt Barbie was what it could have been, an easy go-to, lazy fictional character goes to the real world, kind of like Smurfs from a few years back, or Yogi Bear or Hop, like just this fictional character, real world, and then just wacky shenanigans happen. But instead, Barbie took the ideas of both the positives and the negatives of the Barbie as a character and as an image, and explored that with some phenomenal performances by Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. And the production design in itself was just gorgeous. It was like the toy set was just brought to life. Like, I am just a sucker for practical effects these days because there's just so much that can be used with CGI. And the fact that they actually went full on practical effects with the exploring not only the world of Barbie, but like going from like there to the real world with using like the cardboard and everything, kind of like how they used to do in the early 1900s with filming was quite a spectacle to see, especially in a widescreen theater watching that back to back.
Well, I'm curious, what are your feelings about the fact that Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie weren't nominated? How did you feel about that?
Well, I did think that I would have preferred Margot Robbie over someone like Carey Mulligan in Maestro for actress, because I felt like Maestro was just a very standard biopic, like a very standard Oscar bait. But for the director lineup, I think Greta Gerwig would have been good. But I think that lineup in general was very hard to pick. Like, it would be very hard to see who I'd throw out because every one of them did a phenomenal job. Jonathan Glazer for The Haunting Zone of Interest. Yorgos for Poor Things, I believe, was nominated. Nolan for Oppenheimer, of course, was great.
Scorsese for Killers.
Scorsese for Killers. And Justin Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, which the big thing when that criticism came out was, unfortunately, a lot of people misread that as Justin Triet and thought it was like another all-male lineup. And that really did a disservice to Justin Triet for that. And, like, you know, everyone can get mad about certain snubs. Like, Barbie was a big one. That was the one people saw. But the way some people did it, like, they were trying to push down, like, for example, Margot Robbie's performance as Barbie and trying to push down Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon when, like, they really didn't have too much in common. It just happens that people like the other one or the other, and trying to push this agenda for the themes of Killer of the Flower Moon with the unfortunate genocide of Native Americans, and trying to downplay that just because a billion-dollar movie of Barbie didn't get in was quite toxic, I would say.
Yeah, so I want to go into Killers of the Flower Moon also, because a lot of people did think that Lily Gladstone got snubbed, or she was favored. So we'll go into that in a second, but I want to stick with Barbie for the moment, because I had a big problem with Barbie.
Okay.
Sort of from an ideological perspective, in the sense that there was a ton of marketing for Barbie, and it seemed to me that the marketing for Barbie was marketing it as like a female empowerment movie, you know, push against the patriarchy. And you could correct me if I'm wrong in my assessment here, but that, at least to me, is how it was marketed, you know, as like a fight against the patriarchy and female empowerment and thing like that, which is fine. I have no problem with that being the message of the movie. But it seemed to me that what the movie did actually wasn't what it was marketed to be. So it was marketed to be push against the patriarchy, push against exploitation of women for profit. But it seemed to me what the movie did was have a bunch of male producers exploit Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie for profit. So Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie became the faces of the movie. Movie makes $1 billion, and a lot of that money goes into the pockets of the male producers that nobody talked about in the marketing. So that works against the seeming ideology of the film itself. But then I also think that it was supposed to be like here are role models for women. Look at Barbie standing up for herself, and obviously America Ferrera has that speech about, you know, women are restricted from doing things. But it seemed to me that the most memorable part that people agreed was perhaps the most memorable part was the man in the movie, was Ryan Gosling's performance. So you had this movie pushing itself as a female empowerment, and then people are walking away with Ryan Gosling as the best part of it.
Now, I was about to say, if I could put in my inclusion about that. Now, your stuff about the producer, I think there is some fairness to that, but that's also like just the idea of Warner Brothers in general, like behind the scenes, they like, especially with like, if you look at like the history of the DCEU, that's always been like puppets and strings with certain stuff. But here's the thing, when you look at the history of Barbie's production, this was originally going to be Diablo Cody and Amy Schumer as Barbie. And if you know their material, you know that it would have been a completely different film entirely. Now, with when Greta Gerwig came on and everything, it was more casual, it was more self-referential humor and everything. And the thing is, what made Ryan Gosling as Ken funny is the fact that men can kind of look at that as a goofy way of kind of a reflection on themselves, especially with making fun of kind of the patriarchy of like, you got to be about trucks and horses and everything. That's what made it funny. And you kind of mentioned this as well with America Ferrera's speech. And that's where I think in my opinion, the feminism themes actually do come in. Because here's the thing. When you think about feminism and you think about the power and everything, you know, they do what they want. They can't do it. Nothing girly. Like, and in a way that's both empowerment but also contradictory. Because, like, there are people that like, you know, princesses and fairies, but they also want to make sure that, you know, they want to be out there. They want to have a power. They want to have a voice and say, but they can't, you know, mention princesses and fairies because, you know, then that's suddenly a bringing down of the feminism, which is weird to say because when the point of the movie is it's a complicated situation. You can't just have like one piece or another. And that's what makes it a beautiful film. That makes it good. Now, I want to make this clear. As much as I would love to as I would like to digest into more of the feminist themes and everything, I'm a dude, you're a dude, we're both dudes. The truth is, we're never gonna have what it's gonna be like. It'd be kind of like if we were it'd be like if we were two white guys trying to digest the themes of 12 Years a Slave. Like, we can digest the ideas and everything, but we can never truly know, you know, that viewpoint and everything. And that's what makes it more complex and everything. And Barbie right now is not even the only film that's kind of been on a more complex view right now. With you got The Zone of Interest with current events going on. You got Poor Things, which is the story about Bella Baxter, who has the brain of a 3-year-old, and some of the actions that they do, you know, some people felt grossed out about. But that's kind of what makes it beautiful to talk about. It's these discussions that, as long as people are willing to listen and discuss it in a fully adult way, I think that's what makes these conversations beautiful. I'm not expecting you to suddenly change your mind about Barbie. You're not expecting me to suddenly change my mind about Barbie or something like that. The big thing is we need to have these discussions in a fully adult way instead of these shouting contests. And to even wrap this up, that's what one of my themes of The End of Modern Times was. The idea of just these two voices just shouting at each other just because of a film and everything, and not really saying anything besides, you're stupid, no, you're stupid. And that's just what, in my opinion, if we discuss these conversations, we keep this up, we do these polite debates, I think that's what makes it beautiful. And in my opinion, I think Barbie did a great balance on feminism, both the empowerment side and some of the criticism sides, some of what was right, some of what was wrong, and how this complicated situation, if we all get together and eventually unite on these situations.
Did what it identified itself as, because I'm not combating the feminist message of it. That's not what I'm trying to do. If it has a feminist message that perfectly, you know, credible to make, it's fine. You know, I'm cool with that. My issue is if at the end of the day, that was actually what it embodied, was female empowerment. To me, I don't think it did. I think it actually reflected all of the things that it was criticizing. the exploitation of women for profit seems to me to be somewhat what the movie did with the male producers.
How is it an exploitation of women for profit?
Well, well, because the faces of that movie before it came out were Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig, right? And obviously, they play two huge roles in the film and its production. But who actually made a lot of money on the film? Who were the companies and who were they run by that got a lot of the returns? It was run by men whose names none of us know because they weren't put out as representatives of the film. But it doesn't matter if they were put out as representatives if they're pocketing some cash from it.
Well, I mean, let me just ask you this then. You've seen Little Women.
I haven't.
You haven't. Or you've heard of Wonder Woman, Aliens.
Oh, did you say Wonder Woman or Little Women?
Little Woman,
Oh,
Wonder Woman.
I've seen Wonder Woman.
Sorry.
You mentioned both.
Yep. Wonder Woman, Aliens.
Yep.
All these films that have powerful women.
Mm-hmm.
And also, coincidentally, also have studios ran by men. That's been a thing that's always been. And they're always going to be making a profit and everything. I think this is less than about a movie than doing it, and more of just the question in the system then, if that's the case. Because, I mean, like I said, some of these, even when you look at, Disney is probably the more films that have, a lot of female characters and everything. But when you, obviously, if you're talking about just profits, then, then wouldn't that mean that any film then
I mean, that's the case regardless of, what the film was about or who was directing it or if there's female actors in it, majority of the cast. I mean, that's just kind of how things have always been.
The difference I'm trying to articulate is that those movies, like Aliens, to me, didn't market itself as a female empowerment movie. We saw the performance and we said, that's an empowering performance. To me, Barbie was marketed that way and wasn't transparent about who all was actually profiting from it. And so if it didn't market itself that way and we just watched Margot Robbie's performance and we just heard Greta Gerwig's script, we could have walked away and said that those were empowering things. But because it was pushed on us that it was an empowerment movie before the movie ever came out, that's what I'm taking issue with. Is it trying to formulate its identity and its perception before anybody had a chance to see it and formulate that perception for themselves?
So you don't like the way it was marketed before the film came out. That's your biggest beef with it.
Yeah. And like Eric said, but the Amy Schumer was originally planned, or they were talking
she was going to be Barbie.
Yeah. To me, that was another form of messaging of like body positivity, because Amy Schumer doesn't exactly fall in with the conventional sort of beauty standards. But then that was thrown out the window when they decided to go with Margot Robbie, who like perfectly fits within the conventional beauty standards.
Well, I will counterpoint this by saying there was already some plus-size actors in Barbie, and there was also a transgender cast member for Barbie. These various Barbies and everything. Like the Diablo Cody Barbie, if I remember right, it was just going to be just Amy Schumer Barbie. Like there would have been no other Barbies. But the Barbies that were in the Greta Gerwig, they even show that, like, the evolution of the character. Margot Robbie was specifically stereotypical Barbie. That's the character's name. And, I mean, I hate to say this, but, like, if you're imagining Barbie, you're kind of imagining the impossible standards. And that was also the criticism of the character in itself. And that's where the beauty of Barbie, with its opening, like, it was, as soon as it showed stereotypical Barbie, it then had the line of rosters of different Barbies. You had Barbie in a wheelchair, a plus-size Barbie, a black Barbie, an Asian Barbie, a transgender Barbie. All these different Barbies and Kens that were all around, including a John Cena mermaid.
Right.
But, so it was more, it did bring up that inclusiveness to Barbie. But also, there was a little bit of that cynicalism that they did criticize with the four girls at the lunchroom talking about the Barbie. Like, of the looks of Barbie being impossible standards. And it was even in a fourth wall break by Helen Mirren saying it was maybe a bad idea to cast Margot Robbie with its self-referential fourth wall humor.
Yeah, well, very interesting conversation, of course. And that, yeah, unless you have any final thoughts.
No, I'm Barbied out.
Okay.
I'm sure the comment section will be fun and peaceful and not on fire at all.
So honestly, I think, I don't know, I think sometimes people read more into things than what's really there.
Yeah.
I think Barbie was a fun movie. I think it was interesting. I think it was well done. I think it had some great characters. I think it had a message, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's as complicated as people and you are making the whole thing out to be. That's all.
Well, I was about to say, there's always going to be similar movies like that. The Star Wars sequels have definitely had some extreme reactions. God forbid anyone bring up Ghostbusters 2016. That was like, you even mentioned like when to see it or not, and it's already being a comment section of flames. You know, that's going to be movies then. It's going to be movies now. It's always going to be like, some people are always going to take extremes to different variations of movies. But as long as you kind of like view it as it's just a movie at the end of the day, whether you love it, whether you hate it, you know, it's as long as you kind of accept that it's not like an importance of the entire civilization of Earth, then it's fine. In terms of other movies that I thought were the greatest of the year that got snubbed entirely, I wanted to talk about was The Iron Claw. That one I felt like Zac Efron should have gotten at least an actor nomination for.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%.
It's another film kind of like Barbie, where we talked about Barbie with its feminism. The Iron Claw is about masculinity and toxic masculinity with the wrestling dynamic, the father and son relationship, and the dynamic with the brothers and everything, and trying to make their dad proud and doing whatever it takes to be these champions of the rings, even if it literally destroys them both in a literal sense and an emotional sense.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen The Iron Claw, it's not like Barbie at all. It's like Barbie in the criticism, but it's not goofy. It's actually very sad. It'll ruin your evening, almost guaranteed. In a good way, because it's a very good movie. And Zac Efron did deserve to get nominated.
Can I just bring up female empowerment for a moment? Because
sure.
It just really bothers me how, like, I can see how people would think that was, you know, empowering for women, right? But Poor Things, I take issue with. So, you know, I don't know. Alex, we went to see it, and it's, I'm on. Okay. I don't see how her character and the things that she did were empowering to women at all. Like, seriously. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
She prostituted herself with the most disgusting, nasty old men over and over and over again. How is that? I don't know. As a female, I don't find that empowering at all. And that was her choice to do that. And she went out into the world and was, I don't know. I feel like if the film hadn't gone there, quite there, it would have been a lot better.
I agree with you. I think the first act did... Sorry to interrupt you on that.
No.
But I think the first act, I was hoping for something like Frankenstein and Flowers for Algernon. How it kind of starts with this trio kind of brain and everything, you know, like how the guys, they would kind of take advantage of it. And then she's eventually kind of learning and everything. And eventually she becomes like, you know, super intelligent and everything. But then, like, yeah, you get to the brothel house scene, which was more or less put in a comedic standpoint, which I was not too big on. And the final act with
it wasn't funny.
Or the final act with the random cartoonish villain almost. And while I did enjoy its cinematography, makeup, and especially the production design, I do think that there are legit issues for Poor Things as well that didn't make me enjoy it as much as others did.
Right. Yeah, I was, and after we had seen the movie, we were both kind of like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me, the ultimate message of that film was sort of like a sexual freedom for women kind of deal. And I think that's a fine message to have. That's a fine case to make. But I think if that's going to be made, it should be made by a woman, not a dude. And the director and writer of that film is Yorgos Lanthimos, who's a man. But two, I also don't think it should be presented as virtuous, because I think there's a distinction that needs to be made between whether people have the right to do something and you support their right to do it, versus whether you're morally obligated to respect it. Women, anybody has the right to go sleep around. You have the right to be a prostitute if you want to or need to in some cases. You have that right. I'm not going to take that away from you. I think most people aren't going to take that away from you. Do I have an obligation morally to respect that choice? And that seemed to me where my issue was with the message, is it seemed to be suggesting that I do. But I don't find anything that respectable in prostituting yourself out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I was about to say, I think the thing was, how they did it was, the execution was, if it was more kind of like learning and everything about it, like I said, if it was more like a Frankenstein, Flowers for Algernon, something kind of like that, there could have been like more respected. But the thing was, the way they did it, like it was like this montage of like, oh, what if we had a guy with hooks for hands? What if we had a father showing his son how it is?
Yeah, that was pretty twisted.
It was like, it was the bizarreness of that. It was like, where, it kind of like, I get that it's technically a dark comedy and everything. There's the dark comedies out there, like Pink Flamingos is another one that's like really bizarre, but it was something that just did not really fit the right tone for me for the story.
Well, we all agree on that.
So none of us are going to sell up to Emma Stoneley fans?
Yeah, I'm with you that I thought on a technical level, the movie was actually incredible. Like, cinematography to me was very good. Emma Stone's performance, even if you, like, just the commitment to doing some of the things that she does on screen, to me, is like a brave thing that not every actress would do.
Set design, costumes.
Yeah, set design, costumes, the acting, Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, like the ultimate message that it's pushing on you just didn't seem to be one that I found myself.
And I love reading like all the reviews of the film, and when they talk about female empowerment and how about that film, and most of those comments were by men, and I'm like, really, that's what you find empowering?
Right. I was going to say, I will say, it's not the worst of the lineup. In my opinion, the weakest of the lineup was Maestro, which is the most Oscar baity of the bunch. Like, that's kind of the thing that, if you notice, like, it did not win any of the Oscars. It got nominated by a ton, but it did not really get as much. And the thing is, it's like, it tries to be this black and white biopic. It's Bradley Cooper as a composer. And they're trying to kind of do something like, oh, he had a trouble with his relationships with his wife. He was also a composer, but they don't really show why or what his music is about. Like, you're barely getting like surface levels, like first paragraph of Wikipedia levels of who Leonard Bernstein is, and I just did not get into it at all, especially with Bradley Cooper's more off the wall kind of performance that he had on that. And I would have replaced that with any other.
Yeah, so truth be told, I haven't seen Maestro. I don't know that much about it. I know Bradley Cooper had some like makeup transformation, but yeah, it seemed to me to be very Oscar baity. From the people who have seen it that I've talked to, they say it's just like not even that good.
Yeah, I was about to say
it's not even that good of a movie.
I think the only other Best Picture nomination, I feel like someone's going to correct me if I'm wrong here. The only one that we haven't discussed is Past Lives, which...
Oh my god, I was just going to bring that up.
I was
That's so funny. I love that movie.
Past Lives, it got the participation medal of, hey, you're a Best Picture nom and screenplay nom. That's it. Bye, Past Lives. It was fun having you.
It was fantastic. What a great story.
Very beautiful.
I didn't, but I've heard it's amazing. Yeah, and it sounded.
It's
really
a film
good.
that's basically one of those films that's very simple. It's just two people meet up after a very long time since they were children. One was from America. One was from Korea. They originally had originally were thinking about getting in a relationship as kids, but like when she moved to America, you know, they haven't seen each other for a long time, and she's now with another guy. And the best part about the film is you 100% feel like if it was like in the 2000s, it would have made the guy she married like this evil, like terrible guy, and that the guy she was never with that's the relationship you want to root for and everything. But with Past Lives, nobody's like cartoonishly villain or even antagonistic. Like they're all pretty welcoming to each other. Yeah. And while they question like like what would be like if we were in a relationship, like, you know, like they were kind of like, it's more of like a what if thing. It's not like, well, let's get into this relationship then.
Sure.
Well, and the thing is, they do make, you know, the husband so likable, and he's so understanding, and it's like you can see that these two people still love each other, and yet she's in this relationship and she's married, and so she knows that, you know, they know that that never can be, but the love is still there, and that's kind of what's so beautiful about it. It's kind of sad. I mean, it's happy, but it's sad, all in one, you know.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I wanted to see it. Of all the ones that I didn't see, that's probably the one that I wanted to see the most. Because I heard exactly what you guys are saying, is that it's a really beautiful, touching movie.
Overall, like that entire Best Picture lineup, I would say, in my opinion, has been the best since Parasite year. Like, aside Poor Things, which I gave a 7, and Maestro, which I gave a 5, everything else has been an 8 and higher out of 10. So,
there's one more I want to talk with you about that we've mentioned a couple of times, but it's actually one that I've seen, so I can speak more to it.
Oh, Joe.
Is Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, Scorsese doesn't really make bad movies. It's not a thing that he does. But it didn't win, like, anything, did it?
No, it really didn't. I think one of the big things that I've noticed with the Oscars this year, and just people with film in general, is you kind of notice, like, it's like that, a little bit of, like, that November, late December kind of vibe. Like, The Boy and the Heron, for example, won animated, and it came out in December. Like, Spider-Verse came out in June. You know, it had a lot of talk and everything, but then, like, as time kind of moved on, you know, people calmed down about it, and when Miyazaki got his Oscar now, that came out in December. My opinion, between him and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio being two back-to-back non-Disney movie wins, especially with two different mediums that haven't been in animated, with stop motion and anime, that was great. Poor Things got a lot of noms because it came out around December as well. So when Killers kind of came out in around like October, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, it still kind of had its fling, but it's like it was definitely kind of drying out, especially with Gladstone, because like there was a lot of debate with Gladstone, like as actress or supporting actress, because
you and I had that conversation, Alex.
Because she disappears in like the third act entirely.
So that's why I wasn't too upset with the quote-unquote snub of her for lead actress, because how are you going to compete for lead actress if you're in only like a quarter of the movie, you know, in terms of screen time?
Yeah.
You know, because like she's relevant and seen throughout, like you said, the first 3 quarters, but most of the screen time is populated by De Niro, DiCaprio. She, to me, really didn't feel like a lead actress. She was the lead actress relative to the other actors because the other actors were male. But as far as the movie as a whole, it felt like a supporting role. I felt like if she was up for supporting, she would have absolutely won, no question.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I will say, the film was pretty. I think in terms of when you compare it to other Martin Scorsese films, like it's definitely people would probably put it on more of the lower half. I know some people criticized Brendan Fraser's more Southern lawyer kind of performance, like which is only for 2 scenes, but like feels completely like from like a serious drama to a Looney Tunes short.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's only in it for like 5 minutes. But yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. The cinematography, the acting, everything. You know, I felt like that could have won something.
Something. I know. I was really shocked.
I was surprised about its screenplay snub. Like it got snubbed out of screenplay, but there was like, that was like a pretty packed year. Like I think that's why as well. Like I'm just not too mad about any of the actual snubs. Like as much as I would have loved the Iron Claw to get in, especially over stuff like Naiad, which was nominated, or Maestro. I think like given the year, like 2023, especially at that later half, like was a really freaking phenomenal year. Like the fact that they awarded as much as they did, like especially like I said, with the phenomenon of Barbenheimer, or especially what felt unlikely on paper, Godzilla -1 getting the Oscar in general. You know, seeing all these great films being awarded felt very worthwhile.
So going into that, we've already sort of touched on it just in the natural progression of our conversation, but our best of the year, you know, if you had to do a top 3, like you said, Barbie was your favorite, but if you had to do a top 3, top 5, what else is getting in there for you?
Well, okay, as as cliche and probably repetitive as it is, my top 2 is literally in that order, Barbenheimer. And I would say probably the Iron Claw is up there as well. I would say, the Iron Claw, Godzilla -1, and I think American Fiction reaches up there with Anatomy of a Fall.
Yeah, where does Zone of Interest place for you?
I would say it's probably up there near the top 10.
Okay.
There's just a little bit of issues like the opening black like goes on for a little too long where it's like, okay, we can maybe start this movie anytime now. But the way it's done, I would say it's definitely kind of at least in that top 15.
Yeah.
What about the holdovers?
The holdovers.
I mentioned
That one's in my top 5, actually. That one is, I think it was, if I remember right, if I put it right in my letterbox, it's like Barbenheimer, Godzilla, the Iron Claw. Actually, swap. Iron Claw is number 3, Godzilla is number 4, Holdovers number 5. Holdovers was my biggest surprise because, like, when you look at when you were talking about trailers and marketing and everything, now here's something that's the opposite of how you say it. I saw the Holdovers trailer and I thought it was going to be the most like baity, like I was looking at the plot and everything, like a teacher, and I was like, this is going to be the most boring, predictable film ever. But it was the performances and the creative editing and cinematography, like especially between Giamatti and Dominic Sessa and Divine Joy Randolph. That I saw that with my mom over Thanksgiving, and it was just a very beautiful film that surprised me to no end.
Well, Paul Giamatti can do no wrong, though. I mean, everything that he's in is incredible. I mean, the first thing I ever saw him in was Big Fat Liar. And
I love Big Fat.
I love it. Seriously, I love Big Fat Liar. I've seen it
like multiple times, and that was the first thing that I'd ever seen him in. And I was just like, who is this actor? He is incredible. Every single thing he does.
Yeah, I didn't get around to seeing The Holdovers. I know for a very good friend of mine, it was like his best movie of the year. So I've been wanting to see it, but it seemed kind of, I don't know, saccharine or something like that.
I try to keep myself watching whatever is possible for Best Picture. Like, I follow a lot of Oscar predictions, Gold Derby, and whatnot. And my prediction was like about, literally, I'm not kidding here, literally about 69% correct with the predictions. But the working on... I try to watch different films. Sometimes they go really good. Like I said, Holdovers surprised me. Anatomy of a Fall, I could try to make my way for that. And then there are some films that keep being talked about that eventually kind of just don't get talked about at all and forgotten, like the remake of The Color Purple. When that happened. That's pretty much everyone's thing. Like I went to it around the Christmas week and everything. The crowd was, I will say this, I wasn't too big on the film, but I literally kind of gave it an extra rating because the audience was the most active audience I've ever seen. Like people were going, and like, yeah, you know, you go there and everything. And I was just like, you know what? I'm accepting it. I will not even hush these people. Like there were people that loved the film. There were people that were not too big on the film. And that was just hearing that audience interaction and everything was just fun. The film itself, I could not really care about it. I gave it like 6. I thought the original was a lot better, especially tone-wise. I think putting that kind of story and then adding like a Broadway musical was certainly a choice.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You know, I know I didn't give you this luxury. I could, but to actually look at the letterbox so I can remind myself.
I'm trying to memorize this in my head.
Yeah, so I can actually look at what I said. Because I know Godzilla was up there, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer. But I think there were other ones that went unnoticed. For me, in particular, horror tends not to certainly be successful at the Oscars, but people, like when I see top 10s, there's not a lot of horror that ends up in the top 10. You know what I mean?
I was actually going to bring that up, like while I was thinking, because one thing I think horror would really be successful in makeup. Like, have you guys seen the Evil Dead Rise at all?
Yep.
The makeup on that should have been nominated. Like, it was, like, I think if there's one thing that horror really needs to be appreciated in, is in its makeup, because it's one of the few films that where you can actually put a ton of makeup on these people and it can really look scary and good. And some of it's like a lot harder than it looks. Like you look at Pennywise, the Skarsgård version. You look at the forehead and everything. Like you've seen people try to cosplay that, and it's like it looks really off-putting. And it just doesn't look like the character. And so you have that more appreciation for the big Jimmy Neutron head that Pennywise has that should have been nominated in a few. But horror, you're right. Horror is one genre. Animation is a medium that really needs to get paid attention to because it gets thrown into best animated. That's why I was bringing up Boy and the Heron as well, because Boy and the Heron and, like I said, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, those are the only stop motion and animated film like of the two. Like there's Wallace and Gromit and then Miyazaki's Spirited Away. Every other film is 3D, and a majority of them are Disney Pixar. Now I like Disney Pixar, you know, since the early 2000s. It's the early 2000s especially. But something that you notice is like they also got screenplay nominations, score, like sound, video, like all these great things. And the last time they got that was maybe like Pixar Soul, and even then it was like a blank canvas. The last screenplay was like Inside Out. Like animation really needs to get its love, but the issue is how the Oscars keep treating it. That's like the really bad joke of just, oh, this is something that your kids just vote for.
Yep.
Or this is a film, or 2 years ago, they were like, this is something your kids watch over and over and you're tired of. And that was the same year they nominated Flea, an animated documentary about a man trying to escape, if I remember right, Iran, because he was a gay man. And it was a rated R documentary. But don't worry, this is an animated film where kids watch over and over and over. Yeah, you kind of get the idea. The Academy just does not have that respect for it. Like, when Big Hero 6 won, some of the ballots revealed that they pretty much just picked whatever their kids were watching. It's a medium that can do so much. It has so much variety. But it just became, especially for the late 2010s for a while, let's give it to Disney Pixar because our kids watch it.
Yeah, great point. So I'm going to throw 2 more movies at you. I don't know if you've seen them, but if you have, let me know your comments. Ferrari and The Killer.
I have not seen either of them, but I do know I thought about watching them. But I do know like there were also potential contenders that were kind of thrown around. Ferrari, like Penelope Cruz was kind of talked about for supporting that. She didn't get an event ultimately, but
Yeah, I thought Ferrari was awesome, and that made my top 3 of the year. But yeah, and then nobody I've talked to saw it. No, I can't talk to it or talk to anybody about it. But that would be up there. And then the killer has David Fincher,
Yep.
who I always like. I'm sure you know who he is. You know, it seems like your film knowledge is pretty expansive. Are you typically a fan of Fincher?
I thought Finch is all right. I enjoyed Fight Club. Wasn't too big on Mank, but you know, I think what he does is it's pretty all right and everything.
But those are just 2 more that I'd throw in the conversation. But
If I can just go back to horror films really quick.
Sure.
I mean, I love horror. I'm a fan of horror. But there aren't a whole lot of really well done horror films. I mean, there just aren't. I mean, you have Get Out, which was fantastic, which was recognized, right? I think X was really good. Pearl. I mean, you have some that are really well done, and yeah, they don't really get recognized, but there's a lot of crap made. That really is in horror. So I just want to say that it's not so much that horror doesn't get, recognized. It's just a lot of it is garbage.
I mean, you know what? You have kind of a great point. I mean, there's been, if I remember right, 3 horror films that made the Best Picture nom. As you mentioned, Get Out, The Exorcist, which was an excellent horror film, and the one horror film that did win, but arguably some people just say more of a thriller, is Silence of the Lambs. But and you speak of horror, yeah, most of it is kind of not that good because a lot of it kind of keeps going on that trend. Like when the Blair Witch came out and everything, and then it became a lot of like home video kind of like horror. Paranormal. Yeah, and now, which kind of segues into like something with the Razzies. The film that won was Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, which is basically set off a new genre of public domain horror. If you don't know what public domain is, basically it's when a copyright thing expires and you can feel free to use it however the way you want it. That's how some films like Pinocchio, Peter Pan, you get all these variations, Sherlock Holmes, etc. With a horror thing, they straight up kind of just make it into a horror. That's how Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey got super popular. People talked about it. Oh, they made Winnie the Pooh a killer. Oh no. And then it won a worst picture at the Razzies. Like it swept the Razzies. But basically, at $100,000, it won about $5 million in the box office. And they're trying to make a cinematic universe with Pinocchio, Peter Pan, and there's already like 3 different Mickey Mouse horror films.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah,
including Mickey's Mousetrap. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. The people are more about the gimmick and the quick buck. One I would particularly say that I do not really have much respect for is Full Moon Features. Charles Band did a thing in 2020 called the Barbie and Kendra trilogy, not related to Barbie, to be clear. The character just happens to be named Barbie. Includes Barbie and Kendra Save the Tiger King, Barbie and Kendra Stop Raid Area 51, and the worst one, in my opinion, Corona Zombies, right at the peak of the coronavirus for a quick buck, which really was a tone-deaf decision. Yeah. So
you do watch a lot of bad movies, don't you?
I have a knack for these things. I just have I have a yin-yang balance for good and bad movies. My letterbox is like filled with thousands of different movies.
Yeah, I would put an asterisk on what you said. Is I think mainstream movies, like the really studio horror movies, are generally bad. But that the indie scene, because you mentioned what I would classify as indie movies like X and Pearl, and I think there's actually a lot of those that are very good, like The Witch, Hereditary, Midsummer, Black Coat's Daughter. But you know what I mean? Like these, I just named a bunch of A24 movies.
But you did, no, I was about to say, it's interesting. You mentioned Hereditary, and I want to also slide in Jordan Peele's Us, because those had performances that people wanted to see in there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. If horror really wants to, the main thing with horror is kind of what our perspective of horror. Horror is very easy to make in some cases, but it's how really any film is easy to make, but it's how you perceive to make it and everything. With horror, a lot of the things is something becomes an evil character, this goes around killing people. Even in not even just with movies, with video games as well, with the Five Nights at Freddy's spree and everything of turning a nostalgia thing to horror, it becomes very easy to make a jump scare horror thing. But if I could recommend one video game that actually is very wise about it, it's called My Friendly Neighborhood. And that's a video game that basically around Sesame Street and everything. But the idea is, it's not just a jump scare horror. It's more of an exploratory that pays a loving homage to the Jim Henson era and actually has a respect for these characters. They're not just demonized by kids. They're just puppets that are just really happy to see people. So you don't want to get hugged to death. But it's basically something that takes a material and turns it into something that's unique and creative. And that's what we really need to see more in horror. A lot of people feel there is a lot of greatness in horror, especially with horror movies. The Thing is one of my all-time favorite movies. But it needs to get creative again. It needs to not take these cheap shots, cheap escapes, and repeats the same steps as 4 to 5 other movies that are going on this October.
Alien is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like people just aren't aware a lot of times of the good horror movies out there. There's I don't even know if it's horror or if it's more of a thriller, but there's a movie out there called Love Lies Bleeding.
Yep.
And it's directed by Rose Glass, who did Saint Maud, which was this great horror movie that I can't find anybody to watch.
I mean, literally, that's honestly for a lot of films in general. The most common complaint right now in movies is, why isn't anyone making something original? All it is franchises, sequels, prequels, rip-offs, remakes. But that's the thing. If you look at the top 10 box office, that's all it is, and that's what all people will talk about. That's the thing. If you bring up something like Love Lies Bleeding, they're like, oh yeah, I've never heard of it and everything. But did you hear about the Disney's remake of insert Disney film here?
Yeah.
Because that's something that's kind of more buzzing and everything. And the thing is, people need to put more effort in looking out for these movies. I have a long list of what's coming out this year. Lisa Frankenstein was another film that came out in February. Did all right in the box office, but not too many people really paid attention to that. And instead, the big thing was Madam Web, yet another of the Sonyverse. I know, we're excited to see Madam Web sweep the Oscars.
Right. Yeah, well, I want to hear what you got coming up, if anything.
Sure.
Obviously you made stuff in the past. Maybe you have stuff planned in the future. What are some of your upcoming projects, if you got any?
It's actually interesting because when I brought up My Friendly Neighborhood, that was the video game that inspired me to write a similar script called The Valley of Wonders. And The Valley of Wonders is basically about time. It's how people can learn from each other's past, their present, and kind of learning from each other and everything. It's about these 90s washed up actors that eventually have something of a prop that's worth millions of dollars and everything. And they go into the studio only to find out the studio is more alive than you think. There are characters that haven't been seen since the 90s. And you can really feel that. One episode I was thinking for a twisted dark comedy is this owl that constantly tries to throw out trivia questions. But the joke is all the trivia questions are dated, super heavily dated. The first question is oh, who was the president of the United States? It's Bill Clinton, and just an electric shock or whatever happens with that. And but the idea is this owl knows only everything pre 1990.
Oh, I gotcha.
So
okay,
that's what kind of but the focus is mainly about these characters, how they have grown, what we can learn from each other, and how, despite these characters learning differently from each other, and how they've changed from the child actor to adult and everything, because they because of what goes through and everything, especially like anything with a child actor, like the journeys that some of these kids go through. Like Jeanette McCurdy, for example, is a phenomenal writer who wrote this amazing book about her unfortunate experience on set, and kind of like learning about the people that have grown and such with this transformation with these kind of films. So that's what I kind of want to do for a thing for Catalyst. Mm-hmm. And I want to pitch this as a miniseries. So that's something that I might try to do, or I want to do. I do want to make a comeback at Z-Fest, maybe the 50/50 project. I want to work with the potential project of George Melez. I probably pronounced the name wrong, which is terrible because I was literally practicing pronouncing his name in the car the entire time.
Méliès.
Méliès. Okay, George Méliès. Thank you. Yeah. I was literally practicing saying that in the car before doing this. But yeah, I want to do an homage to his work. Try to do like cool silent fantasy film, kind of like maybe do that for Z-Fest, because something that a lot of people have been a fair criticism about my films is I am a very wordy person, as you could tell. So I will write a lot of monologues and but don't really talk about much of the action. And that's something that a few people laid some great notes for me for. And I think that's that's something that could be a fun challenge and everything, to kind of challenge yourself. Try to do something completely different off the hook. And I haven't had too many other different projects other than that, but that's what I think I want to work on right now at the moment. I could change my mind as usual, but that would be something great. I would love to work again with different people. I know obviously everyone has their own sets and everything. I'm not going to be salty and jealous just because I didn't get picked for the cool kids team, but I think it would be, that's what networking is for, trying to get myself out there. Right. And I think that's one advice for any newcomers, especially because I saw already there's a bunch of newcomers for the film, is try to network yourself. And it's okay that you're not getting picked out for everything. Use that to learn, to grow as a person, and keep making projects to show people what you can do, because you never know when they're going to turn around.
Yeah. Awesome. Great advice. The Méliès project sounds awesome. I think for film buffs, which I consider myself, it's really cool to always harken back to those older, pay homage to.
One of my top 5 directors of all time, to be 100% honest. Number 1, Jim Henson. Love the Muppets.
Oh, interesting. Huh? So everybody check those works out, or keep an eye for updates on those works from Eric. The last topic I want to talk with you about is, we've talked a lot about the Oscars, specifically what should have won, what we agree with, disagree with. But do you think the Oscars, as far as legacy for a movie or critique of a movie, actually have any credibility anymore?
Well, let me start off by talking to you about the history of the Oscars. Now, I promise it won't be a 3-hour-long thing. But the founder of the Oscars, Louis B. Mayer, literally quoted what everybody has been joking about for years and years and years now. And he specifically said, I want to give these guys gold statues so they can feel good about themselves and continue working for my projects. And that was, so basically the pizza party at work. But here's the thing though. You might say that, but it's been nearly a century of the Oscars, and people have shown how much of worthwhile, like how many Best Picture winners have a lot of people watched. Like I watched one of my all-time favorite films, Ordinary People, because it won a Best Picture and everything, and I was curious about it. And a lot of people have been looking at different Best Picture winners. Birdman is another great example. Moonlight, it was this little indie film that ultimately won, albeit now stuck with the legacy of that film that was corrected if La La Land won, but still a film that got nominated and brought up and everything. I think there is a lot of work with the Oscars that people don't even know. Like, I'll see every year on Facebook or something like that. There will be comments like, nobody cares about the Oscars anymore. Nobody cares about and then literally like the next few days, after the Oscars, there'll be nothing but talking about what won, what lost. And I guarantee you, every Oscars has at least one GIF, like a new meme or whatever. This year was the dog from Anatomy of a Fall, you know, doing the little clap or whatever, like, or the I'm Just Ken song that kind of got brought up, you know. Everyone talks about this stuff. Like, everyone acts elite about saying they don't care about the Oscars, but, like, in truth, everyone kind of everyone has a little bit of care. It's kind of like pizza. Like, you know, it's very casual to say, you know, I like pizza. Or, you know, someone will actively like, I don't care about pizza. But, you know, if you bring in pizza, they're going to ask for a slice.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. I mean, there is some that, you know, haven't aged well. Crash is probably the biggest.
Oh, yeah.
The film that did not age well, you know.
Well, Brokeback Mountain should have won. I mean, everybody knows that.
I was about to say that, or Driving Miss Daisy, or Green Book. But for every one of those, there's like a Parasite, Oppenheimer, and just some really strong films that really brought back. And the Academy is always evolving and everything. Some of it very, very slowly. Like, for example, with the actress, there's only been 2 out of the nearly 100 years of the Academy. There has only been 2 non-white people that won that category. Halle Berry, Michelle Yeoh. But it's still a very slow progress. But we're now starting to bring back international films. We're now starting to finally get more into animated films that aren't just give it to Disney and Pixar. We're now starting to really kind of bring in different people, various backgrounds, and trying to get that all created. Like, the Oscars came out with a new rule that a lot of people have overreacted about. It's basically, the rule is basically, if you're a crew or a film you make or an audience member, any of those 3 it's not about a straight white guy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, people are like, oh no, they're all terrible and everything. But it's like, if you really stop to think about it, especially with cast and crew, how many people make a film? Hundreds of thousands of people. What's going to be more easier? Have like a woman or someone of a different race or a gay man or someone like that, like, work as a crew member or an audience member or a character in your film? Or suddenly making sure that every single person is a straight white guy? Mm-hmm. Like, it's one of those rules that's like, makes more sense when you actually read the rules and think about it.
I want to work on these films with crews of hundreds of people. Cool.
Yeah.
How many were on our last one?
Yeah, something like that.
I had like 15 at most.
Yeah, skeleton crews over here.
Skeleton crews!
So I have a bone to pick with what you said about Ordinary People, because it beat one of my favorite movies of all time out in The Elephant Man.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say, yeah, that is the one film I do know. Like, 1980 was a very good year in film, to be clear. Ordinary People, Raging Bull, and The Elephant Man.
Yep.
Like, people, like, a lot of people would prefer Raging Bull. Mm-hmm. Well, I personally really love The Ordinary People for its drama, and especially with mental health. Especially because back then, like, in the 1980s, you know, mental health wasn't as brought up. Especially divorce. Like, divorce was a new thing back then. And kind of exploring that in a very mature and emotional way was phenomenal. And that Donald Sutherland, who played the father in that, I think should have been nominated. But unfortunately, he got snubbed. I think that Ordinary People was a great year. That was a great year. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the greatest year of the Oscars, 1994.
Yeah, I disagree with the winner of that year, too.
Forrest Gump?
Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah, I do disagree, but it was still like, it was Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. That's like a great standard. If it was 10, they probably would have had like Ed Wood and The Lion King for sure.
Yeah. To me, though, it just feels like at some point it kind of lost its, like when you hear Lawrence of Arabia was nominated for however many, 11, whatever the nomination was, and you go and watch Lawrence of Arabia and you're like, yeah, this deserved. It feels like they were more right. And like you brought up Crash, I would throw the Forrest Gump in there. I think is significantly worse. Obviously people like it, but I think it's significantly worse than a lot of the other choices. Shakespeare in Love, Spotlight. Does anybody even remember that movie was made?
Shakespeare in Love is another interesting one. That is one thing I wanted to talk about because the Academy, especially around the 90s, was actually quite notorious with campaigning. Like, it's no secret that a lot of these films that are made are been campaigning, and obviously Shakespeare in Love had a very powerful producer who I shall not name and is rightfully in jail. But
Wasn't that one Platoon? Wasn't Platoon?
no, it was that
Saving Private
Saving Private Ryan.
Sorry, Saving Private Ryan. Yeah.
But 1998 in general had a great year of films like that, American History X, Pleasantville, and just a phenomenal year of films that got plastered because of Elizabeth and Shakespeare in Love, because of insane, corrupt marketing campaigns from people that should not be 50 feet away from anybody in Hollywood.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you look at the 21st century, there's a couple that I think were right. No Country for Old Men, I thought deserved it. The Departed, I thought deserved it. Even The Hurt Locker, to a degree, if I remember what that was up against, that might have deserved it. But a lot, it feels like they've been consistently choosing films that don't really have a lasting impact. And like, you brought up the Parasite year. Now, Parasite is an excellent film. I think that'll survive into history as a very good, great movie. But even then, it felt like they had gotten it wrong enough to where, at least for me, maybe you guys didn't feel the same way, but to me, when they chose that, it felt like, we have to choose this so it's not an Oscar so white. We have to choose this so that we look like we're appreciating international. It felt agenda-driven to choose that movie as opposed to a genuine, this was the best movie of the year. You know what I mean?
I get you. I was going to say, some of the films that, I think there was more to that with, not like with Parasite, I would say more with Coda, I would say.
Did that win Best Picture?
Yeah, see, that's exactly that reaction. Because here's the thing. If you look at the 2020s, there's 4 Best Picture winners. Everything Everywhere All at Once, which a lot of people love. Oppenheimer, which that's, since Lord of the Rings Return of the King, that is the first Best Picture winner to be in the top 10 box office of the year. Nomadland, which, that was 2020, so that was a little bit of a scrape year. But and then there was Coda. But I will defend Coda for a little bit with saying it was 2021. It wasn't that, it was kind of awkward trying to get back into film. I wasn't too big on the front runner, which was The Power of the Dog originally.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing with Coda was that kind of got it into Best Picture was when it had like Best Screen Ensemble at the SAG Awards, and you saw this all deaf cast and everything, and Troy Kotsur, who I thought Troy Kotsur did phenomenal and deserved supporting actor, I should say. But that year was just a lot of meh films. There was Don't Look Up with Adam McKay, which was, I did not like that one at all.
Junk, yeah.
Belfast, King Richard, which, might have
Will Smith.
I was about to say, yeah, the Will Smith movie, which I'm sure everyone only remembers it for the phenomenal performance of Will Smith and King Richard. Nothing else happened at Oscars. But,
I like Don't Look Up.
A lot. I know you did. We are.
It's atrocious.
yeah. But with Coda, it was like, okay, what's going to be the choice here? The weird Benedict Cumberbatch movie or this uplifting film about the deaf community and everything? And so they did choose with Coda and everything. And Coda was a decent movie. But when you compare it to Everything Everywhere All at Once and Oppenheimer and Nomadland, like, it's a 7 compared to a bunch of 9s and 10s.
Yeah.
And I do feel bad for it a little bit because, like, it is like I said, when you're having to compare like those big films to the little film that could, you do kind of like, yeah, this is the stomp, but it's like, I don't want to make this like a bad movie either.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't, truth be told, I didn't see Coda, so I can't comment to its merit. I've seen a couple scenes from it, like a couple of the memeified scenes, like is specifically when the dude says I don't remember what it was, something about him farting and deaf people.
Oh yeah, that was a weird year for fart jokes. Like it was between that and King Richard, they had like fart jokes.
Yeah, and so I don't know about that one, but like even if I were to ask the average person, maybe not you, but maybe even you or me, what the past 10 no, because I said me too, but the past 10 Best Picture winners, how many do you think could get all 10?
Well, I was about to say, it really all depends on passion. For example, I could ask you or myself, what are the past teams that won the Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. But we all still watch, like, a lot of people still watch the Super Bowl.
But we're in film.
But with film, I was about to say, I was about to say, and the thing is, it's because of the movies themselves. Like, you mentioned Lawrence of Arabia and Sound of Music. Like, that was back when, like, there was, like, 10 films maybe, getting, like, by 3 major studios in a theater. There are so many studios, so many options, so many varieties. And here's the thing. Like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of took over a lot of the franchise films. Like, you look at, like, the last 10 years of movies. It's all superhero films. It's all Pixar. Pixar for a little bit. There was a lot of remakes. Like I said, that's why that brings up back to the people that complain about, no, it's all sequels, prequels, remakes. And that's kind of what has been nothing but box office filled. And it's why, like, you look at something like the People's Choice Awards and everything, and it's like nothing but those movies. And you're kind of looking at that and you're like, are those really the best films of the year just because they're the popular films? No. But at the same time, you have to have that balance. Like, you can't go too indie. That's what the Indie Spirit Awards are for. Mm-hmm. But you also can't be too popular like the People's Choice. The Oscars kind of do a decent amount balance. Like, this year, we obviously mentioned Barbenheimer. Last year was Top Gun Maverick and Avatar 2, The Way of Water. Mm. And, like, there's at least normally, like, even the Parasite year, as mentioned, like, there was Joker, which had a lot of different reactions. Some people loved it. I personally really loved it. And some people did not love it. Mm. But these were films that were talked about, praised in the community, whether you enjoyed it or not. And I think the important thing is, like, with that relevance, it's sometimes even, like, you look at something new. Like, Anatomy of a Fall is one film that, let's be real, not too many people would have been into if it wasn't for the Oscars that brought it up and everything, or these award shows that talk. Or Parasite, that was a film that, like, got, like, when I first heard about Parasite, like, around the Globes and everything, I wanted to check it out. I checked it out right after the Oscar one, and it was phenomenal. It was worthwhile. I think with Parasite being more noted and everything, with its variety of production, its cast, and especially the score, which is underrated, I think it was just because a lot of people enough liked it. Now, it's not like there hasn't been narratives before, as I mentioned with Coda, or Green Book, for example, was an example of the older voters.
Green Book, yeah.
Yeah, Green Book. Or Bohemian Rhapsody, which even now, like, you don't think Bohemian Rhapsody would be nominated today because of, like, how much has changed with music biopics. Like,
I love Bohemian Rhapsody.
I'm going to have to disagree on that one. Like, in my opinion, the editing in that one was one of the worst wins next to Suicide Squad, for the 2016 Suicide Squad for makeup.
Yeah. Yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't know, it seemed like a cliche biopic, and I also don't like Queen's music, and the director...
What?
Like, molested a kid, so...
You don't like Queen's music?
No.
Hold on.
I'm not a fan. Every song feels like they had 3 ideas for a song, didn't want to complete each one, and so they just mashed them together. Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, is almost unlistenable to me.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that. But continuing on, we are actually in a new era with the biopic now. With we got so many brand biopics now. Like, there's a Flaming Cheeto movie that existed. There was a thing about shoes. Jerry Seinfeld is making a Pop-Tart movie. And there's so many music biopics these days. And some are not that tone-wise that great. Like Back in Black with Amy Winehouse. Some people felt like doing her would be way too soon and kind of a bit greedy to kind of like have her story be out. There's a guy who's literally making a Beatles movie and literally doing 4 movies about each and every Beatles side of the story.
Really?
Wow.
What did you think of Elvis, though? I don't think Elvis was anything, and I
Elvis,
really enjoyed it.
Well, Elvis certainly won something, not at the Oscars. It won 2 Razzies, though, for Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's the one, like, even the Elvis enjoyers were like, yeah, Tom Hanks was kind of weird in that one.
Austin Butler should have won the Oscar.
He was great.
I'm going to have to disagree, but not only on Brendan Fraser, but I actually think Colin Farrell for The Banshees of Inisherin won.
Yeah, I loved that movie. We both did.
He was really good. They were all good. There were a lot of great actors.
Yeah.
And again, that was another decent year film. I really liked Everything Everywhere All at Once. And actually, speaking of which, that's another thing that's of the Oscars relevance. You look at someone like Brendan Fraser or Ke Huy Quan. These were actors that, like, they had a start. They got, like, Brendan Fraser especially got pretty famous, but Ke Huy Quan, he started with Indiana Jones.
Short Round, yeah.
As Short Round. And The Goonies. And then just never really heard of again.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then he got into Everything Everywhere All at Once. And because of that film, he got a lot of support from people. And now he's in Loki. He's in a few Disney Plus shows. He was in Kung Fu Panda 4. He's getting in so many movies now because of, like, how much, not only because of how much people loved him and everything, but also just because of his personality and just seeing, like, how much he has grown ever since his days as Short Round.
Yeah.
And without the Oscars, like, he probably would be not as many films as it was today because of, like, how much attention they have gotten with this guy and everything. And same with Brendan Fraser. Like, the internet has called it the Renaissance with his comeback and everything. And so I think it can really help push a career and everything and get these people interested. That's why with some even directors like Parasite, with the director of Parasite now making a film with Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson. He was getting delayed, but, you know, Bong Joon-ho, I probably pronounced that name wrong, but you know, they're all getting these pushes in their career because of these Oscar wins and everything, or even a nomination that helps get them a push and everything.
Except for supporting actress. I feel like a lot of supporting actress winners just kind of, I don't know what happened to. Like Marissa Tomei, for instance.
Well, she's been a lot.
She's been alright.
She's in the Marvels.
No, but after that, for like years, did you see her? You know what I'm saying? It's like, who are some of the others? There were a few.
Marissa Tomei was my celebrity crush after My Cousin Vinny.
There was last year was JLC for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and she, like, from the Halloween days, you know, now she's been kind of making a comeback now lately.
Yeah,
a couple of films as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. But I also think that there is, well, you know my stance on women in film. How I pretty much only work with lead female actors. I don't do male lead actors because I think their screen presence is so good. But it does feel like in a lot of these mainstream movies, the supporting actresses just fall by the wayside.
They do?
You know,
Oscar or not?
Yeah. But yeah, very interesting conversation, Eric. I appreciate you stopping by.
I'm sure this has been the most fun conversation yet.
It has been so much fun.
It's been fun, yeah.
And yay, Barbie.
Yeah, we'll see if we go for we'll see if I make a comeback or not.
Yeah.
This will either be the one of the first or the last you'll ever see of me.
Well, we'll have to bring you back for next year's Oscars because
for sure,
very entertaining conversation.
We'll make this a tradition, perhaps.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey.
Great conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Phenomenal meeting you.
Yeah.
Phenomenal meeting you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, good to meet you. But yeah, that's Eric Forsman, filmmaker, plays a lot of roles. Check out The End of Modern Times as well as his upcoming work, and we'll see you on the next episode of Film Network.